What's up, guys? Welcome back to Read Instead. I'm Jake. Glad to have you here tonight. It's nighttime right now as I'm recording this video. Before we do anything, let me just give you a quick reading update, what I've been up to. I think I mentioned to you guys in my last video that I was reading The Cartel by Don Winslow, which is the second book in the Border trilogy by him. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through or so. I'm not finished with this yet. I think normally I probably would be by now. I've been at it for maybe a week or so. But the reason being is because I just had to get into this Joe Abercrombie book, The Heroes. Joe Abercrombie is one of my favorite fantasy writers for sure. They call it grimdark fantasy. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that subgenre of a genre. Grimdark. It's basically fantasy, just with more, just rated R, as I usually tend to describe things. You know, more violence, more cursing, bad language, but nonetheless very entertaining. Joe Abercrombie. So that's what I'm up to right now. It's like the second time in my whole life where I've actually read 2 books at once. But just yesterday or the day before, I saw The Heroes just sitting there on my desk in my room, and I just picked it up and started going at it, and I've been enjoying it. As you guys can probably see in the title of this video, I wanted to make sort of a different video today. Different for me, not so different from booktube, but I wanted to talk about top 5 best or worst, rather, probably the more appropriate way to describe these characters, worst antagonists that I personally have ever read in fiction. So without further ado, let's talk about those 5. All right, so first and foremost, guys, I just want to talk about sort of a little bit of the criteria and then just give you a little heads up, right? So criteria-wise, when I was making this list and I was thinking about these characters, I think there's a difference when it comes to antagonists and villains, right? Some villains, at least for me, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but there are some villains that you're actually very entertained by, and in some ways maybe you want them to succeed a little bit. But in this particular list, I'm not talking about villains or antagonists that I thought were really entertaining and that I was sort of rooting for. I'm just talking about these 5 characters are just the worst of the worst kind of human beings that I've ever read personally. And in saying that, I want to sort of give you guys a quick heads up, a quick warning that I'm just going to briefly sort of describe why these characters are as evil as I think they are, and some of the things that they do might be a little offensive to some people, a little bit triggering. You know, some of these characters were sexually violent in the novels. So just wanted to give you that heads up. But without further ado, let's get to number 5 worst antagonists that I've ever read. Okay. If you guys have ever read this book, I'll get to reviewing it at some point. If I haven't given these novels full reviews yet on my channel, I will eventually do that. But this particular novel, called 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, a Canadian Afghani novelist. This is actually the only book that I've read by him. I have a couple others that were highly reviewed on my bookshelf behind me. But this book, obviously, it takes place in Afghanistan, and it basically, it's through the viewpoint of a couple different women. And these women are wives to a particular man. And that particular man's name is Rashid. And Rashid is an alcoholic, and he had an infant son before the novel even begins. He had an infant son from a previous relationship that died in a tragic accident, and that sort of just poured gasoline on the flames of bitterness and anger that already sort of seems like it resided in him, and then to top it off, he's an alcoholic on top of those things. And he there's nothing redeeming about this guy. He just he sort of made me sick to my stomach, for lack of a better term. He's a misogynist by all intents and purposes, and I'm not talking about, like, you know, we sort of I feel like we throw that word around sort of loosely today. He's a misogynist. If you think maybe, you know, in a family, like maybe husbands and wives, mothers and fathers have different roles to play, whatever, like some people will just call that misogyny. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the kind of misogyny where, you know, someone literally thinks that a woman is equal with like a house pet or something like that, where a woman's role is to keep her mouth shut and work all day and tend to chores and basically just, you know, sleep with the husband when he wants to, and then when they're done with that, go back and do your chores and keep your mouth quiet. And you know, that's the kind of man Rashid is. He was just made me sick to my stomach. And you know, it climactically comes to a head later on in this novel. I won't get into that. You guys, I would recommend reading this book. This book is very heart-wrenching. It's a real gut punch, like all the way through. But it does sort of, it turns beautiful at the very end. I'll just say that. So number 5 on the list, Rashid in 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. Okay, as you can see, Stephen King's 1986 novel, It. And you guys are probably thinking that I'm going to say Pennywise, right? I'm not going to say Pennywise, because to me, Pennywise was entertaining. And not that so much in the sense that I wanted him to, you know, win, and I wanted him to, you know, continue to abuse the 7 children in the book that eventually become adults. Nothing like that. I just found him, and still do, Pennywise entertaining. But the number 4 antagonist, worst antagonist, is going to be Henry Bowers. And as most of you guys probably know, this is just a bad kid. This is just a bad kid. And you start to really develop a love and a connection, because Stephen King writes these children in this novel so well, and goes into their sort of shortcomings and their personal things that they all sort of battle with in different ways. And this kid, Henry Bowers, just completely takes advantage of all those things. I mean, maybe you guys have seen the movie. If not, you've read the novel, hopefully. And, you know, we're talking about a kid who's got some serious mental issues. I mean, if you feel that while you're, bullying a kid and beating him up, that, you know, a good thing to do is to start carving your name into a kid's stomach, that's just sick and messed up. And, there was this kid. It wasn't fun to read him, but it was fun to see, the Losers Club start to sort of gain some maturity and toughness through their interactions with Henry Bowers. But this is just a bad kid through and through. Number 4 on the list. Okay, so this book has been on this table before, on this channel before. And again, I'm reading, maybe because it's so fresh in my mind right now, because I'm reading the second book in this series, as you guys know. But The Power of the Dog by Don Winslow, the cartel leader, El Patron, as some would refer to him in this novel, is he's a cartel leader, and that's what he is. And the thing about, I think I mentioned this before in reviewing this book, cartels, and especially the ones that run them, their intention really is to turn people's minds, right? Whether it's the media, whether it's the public, whether it's the police, whether it's the politicians around Mexico. And the way that they do that is through intimidation. So much of the violence and the acts that take place, in this novel are intended to not just delete a person or make them disappear, but to actually intimidate the people, so the villagers or the police or anyone, any of the occupations that I just mentioned. So they go to whatever means sort of necessary to do that. And there's something about Adán Barrera in this novel that first of all, he's very intelligent, and he's like an expert sort of CEO of a business, that business being his, cartel in the different regions that he has to control. And, it's just sort of sickening and vicious to understand that he would go to the means that he goes to intimidate people and to make his business continue to succeed and make the money continue to pour in and all these things. It's almost as though there's nothing that's off limits. There's nothing that's off limits. Children, women, families. There's just nothing that's off limits that would keep him from, his business going into recession in any way. Number 3 on this list, Adán Barrera and The Power of the Dog by Dawn Winslow. Okay, we're going to talk about Dune, one of the probably the most popular science fiction book ever written. Even if you guys have seen the movies that have come out in the past couple of years, I would still encourage you to read this novel. It's pretty, it's a journey, and it'll be something that I would think would make an impression on you, forever. It's a very powerful and well-written novel, and we're talking about Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. And as I open up this video, I talked about antagonists and villains that sometimes I want to succeed and maybe I find entertaining. That for me, that's not this guy. And I think one of the things that left an impression on me and still does to this day is, I don't know if there is a protagonist and an antagonist that are further apart in sort of good and evil in anything that I've ever read. If you guys maybe have some others on your mind between antagonists and protagonists, villains and heroes that are further apart, drop it in the comments. But we're talking about a guy who, basically committed genocide, and there's just no, he's just pure evil. I can't really think of a better way to describe him. And then in contrast to that, you have young Paul, who continues to sort of rise up and sort of follow a path of righteousness. And I think maybe as I'm sort of, verbalizing it right now, I think maybe just the contrast between Paul, left an impression on me of how evil Harkonnen really was. So he's number 2 on the list for me. Okay, we're at number 1. This is just a personal thing for me. I don't want to talk about this book too much. The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I will get around to doing that. And by the way, this book is so sort of expansive and epic that there are multiple protagonists and there are multiple antagonists in this book. But the one that left such an impression on me, and I almost get like a sick, nervous feeling in my stomach even today when I read this book, 2 or 3 years ago anyway, something like that, is William Hamley. And I'll just briefly tell you who William Hamley is. He's going to be number 1 on this list for me as the worst antagonist that I've ever read personally in fiction. And he's the son of a lord, and he sort of he gains the title to a piece of land that should rightfully go to a brother and sister, a family in this novel that their father has been sort of politically persecuted and he's thrown in jail, and it's just a whole bunch of backstabbing, politicking, scheming going on that gives this spoiled little brat William Hamley land. And you can hear me, it's like coming out of this boy. he's just a just picture, I just want you to picture a person who would, you know, violently, sexually and violently, you know, hurt a girl, that he's continuing to basically be like, yeah, I did that to you. What are you going to do about it? That's right. Like, you know what I mean? Just the worst of the worst. And this kid continues on throughout this entire novel to just antagonize this family, this brother and sister who have been abandoned by everyone else, and they're trying to do the right thing. And this girl becomes an entrepreneur, and like, I could just keep going on about this story. I love this novel. I'll talk about how much I love this novel in another video. But this kid, William Hamley, is just a thorn in the flesh of this brother and sister who, you know, as a reader, you just come to really love and respect, and you want them to succeed and do well. And this kid does nothing but want to you know, just ruin them and stick it to them. And he just has such a sense of self-righteousness. And you know, there's that saying, like, you were born with a silver spoon up your butt. You know, he's that, and he just has no idea what it is to work and earn anything, or to, you know, to sweat and to toil. And you know, he just left such an impression on me. This spoiled little brat. Okay, I gotta chill out. But for me, that's number one. And by the way, these could all sort of be, you know, they were all pretty close. But when I thought about this, I looked through all the books that I've read, and the one that I hate the most, even still to this day, is William Hamley in The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. All right, so normally I say at the end of these videos, if anything I said during this video sounds entertaining or intriguing to you, then I would recommend reading the book. I feel a little weird saying that today, but who knows? Maybe me talking about these evil, no good, terrible people that, you know, gave me a sick feeling in my stomach as I read these novels. I don't know, maybe if that seems entertaining to you, I would still recommend, you know, picking up any one of these books. And I will tell you, too, for just about all these books, let me think here off the top of my head. Yes. In all these books, right, for how evil these antagonists are that I just described to you, on the contrary to that, there are certainly lovable characters. As much as you might hate these villains, you'll love the ones that are trying to do the right thing and trying to succeed in these novels. So if that's any consolation to you, I would, definitely pick up any of these books, guys. If you agree with me, if there's maybe some villains or antagonists that I didn't talk about, I'm not super well read, so I'm sure I left some out that maybe you guys can tell me about or tell everybody about. Please drop that in the comments. I want to create this community. I want to get people, off their phones and reading again. And if we, develop a nice conversation within the comments, and then who knows, maybe down the line we'll get on another platform where we can have more of a back and forth discussion, then we'll do that. But that's up to you guys. I'm here. I'm going to keep reading, and I'm going to keep making videos because I enjoy doing this. Till next time, you guys take care.